In case you missed it, here is a clip from episode 3 with Boomer Foster, president of Long & Foster Real Estate.
Leadership is about doing, not saying. Because, you get a lot of vocal people who profess to be leaders, and they'll say one thing, but when you watch them perform, they'll do something completely different.
Right.
And I think you've got to have a consistency. Like, I want to lead by example. If I don't want to ask somebody to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So if we're talking about, managers or regional managers, and you're talking about, making contacts and recruiting and building relationships, I don't have legitimacy if I'm sitting in the ivory tower and saying, you guys need to be doing this, if all I'm doing is sitting in the ivory tower and not out doing that myself. So leadership by example is something that I learned in football, because I was very vocal when I first got to college. And by the time, at the end, it wasn't about, do as I do. It wasn't about do as I say.
Hey, I just wrapped up my conversation with Frank Stidman, and he talked to us today about how he was able to persevere after experiencing serious financial setbacks in his early years. I hope you enjoy this episode. Frank Stidman.
We think is actually Stidman, as in horses.
So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming over today. It's funny, you just mentioned that you think Ellis Island butchered it. So my dad tracked our ancestry back, and at one point our last name was spelled with an S-E-N. And when our first folks came over through Ellis Island, they misspelled it and changed the S-E-N to S-O-N, and we were forever spelling Jorgensen with an S-O-N instead of an S-E-N. So you're not the only one that's victim of the folks there at Ellis Island, but they had a lot of names to process, didn't they?
Yeah, and thick accents to work through, and different alphabets and things. And in you're Danish, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
So you got the two little dots over some of the letters.
So my dad's ancestry is Norwegian. So we didn't have the two dots in Norway, but in Denmark, we actually have the O with the line through it, which didn't exist here.
But you were born here. And
I was born in Denmark.
You were born in Denmark.
Yeah,
okay,
I was born in the same exact hospital my mom was born in, just at a different time.
And your father was a GI?
He was a Marine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a Marine.
Okay, so you're naturalized one way or another, regardless of where you're born. Very cool, man.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm legit.
Yeah, absolutely. And making it and killing it.
Yeah, well, doing all right. Trying, one day at a time.
Yeah.
So tell us about you.
Sure.
It's always funny how people end up sitting down and chatting with me, but tell us a little bit about where you came from, where you grew up, and give us a little bit about your family history.
So I'm a native of Washington, D.C. metropolitan, Fairfax County, which is only noteworthy because so many people come and go from this area. I think you can relate. Mm-hmm. When I meet a native, it's kind of a special thing because that's just not that common. That being said, I bought the house I moved into when I was 3 from my parents 20 years ago. So I've effectively been at the same address for 40 years.
That's really unusual.
Very unusual for this area, but not unusual for the middle class neighborhood I live in. And so probably inside of that time, I've seen a dozen, maybe 24 people I grew up with move back. And that's probably the future of the area for people that are merging from college into the workforce, because we really can't afford to live in Fairfax County unless our parents take care of us like that.
Right.
We've been priced out. We're heading west, but who knows where that's going.
Yeah, so the folks are moving back in with their parents.
No, they're buying their parents' houses.
Oh, I got you.
So in my case, at that time, my income level could not have supported buying that house.
Right.
But it needed to be fixed up. My mother was sick.
Yeah.
My parents financed it at 0% till I could get the loan.
Wow.
And I'm hearing that story repeatedly throughout the neighborhood.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
You're lucky you had them there to do that for you.
Yeah, so it's different to be a native of the area because you're a little more interested in it. I know quite a bit about the history that's not necessarily discussed. We had a few nudist colonies in the county in the 40s. We've had some murders. Georgetown Pike is full of history.
Yeah.
It's if you live here, you feel more connected. You want to learn those things, and you kind of go after what's not obvious or what and so forth.
Yeah.
But my I did not do a traditional route. You and I think, mirror each other, even though I do have a college degree. That was later in life.
Yeah.
I started a landscaping business in my late teens.
Right.
That turned into a wireless tower construction
and
business.
That's crazy, because that always just scratching my head, and it's funny. One of the reasons you got here is we were just talking about, what was your path to success, and did you go to college, and so when you were young, you opted not to go to college. So how old were you when you started your landscape company?
I want to say 19, and I went bankrupt around 23.
Well, that was a 4-year ride.
Yeah, it was painful, but you learn from those things.
Yeah.
And, even sound bites you've given me. When I have tough days, I remember that, perseverance is everything.
It is.
And they say that, you could read a library full of books about business and how to succeed and this and that, but that is the number one factor in whether people succeed. So when you were having trouble, you told me that you got on the phone and made 100 phone calls a day or something like that. I mean, that's serious perseverance.
Well, yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. So that was in 2001, after 9/11. I had a marketing company, and it was right around 9/11, and the dotcom crash all happened at the same time. And I had a lot of customers who were in that dotcom space that just all of a sudden evaporated. So I literally came to work one day and was missing about 50 or 60% of my core client base. They were just gone, right?
Overnight.
Overnight. Well, let's say literally it happened over the course of about a 30-day period. I even had one customer place a huge order, and I was in their office building in Tyson's Corner, and ironically, it was a Danish company. They placed a huge order for embroidered shirts. We produced them, and I was back 30 days later. They were gone.
Wow.
Every desk, office, every computer, the front door was locked. You could see through the glass doors. And, that was the day, that was the moment I realized I was in big trouble, right? Because I had a huge tens of thousands of dollars that I had laid out that I wasn't not only going to get my capital back, but I wasn't going to get the profit, and that hurt. And I did. I got to my desk, and I just said I got to make 100 calls a day, and I called and called and called. In fact, a lot of folks I called were landscapers, because they were a huge consumer of shirts and jackets, and that was one of the things we did at our marketing company was produce that collateral. So, but yeah, it was just pure tenacity. That got me through that.
Yeah.
But so tell me what happened. So you started at 19. That's pretty interesting. I've got another friend of mine who I'm going to be sitting down with next week, and he started his first company at 17 or 18. Did very well. But so how did you end up in bankruptcy at 23? What was kind of the path?
You can grow too fast.
Yeah.
My father was an accountant, and he had a lot of good nuggets, and he said growing fast can be just as much as a fatality as growing too slowly or not managing other aspects of it.
Right.
So we started landscaping for a guy who was developing cell towers.
Right.
And at the time, that was just amazing work. I mean, everything was cell towers and tech and everything like that.
Yeah.
He lost his ears and owed me probably $50,000 or $60,000, and that trickled down to me.
Right.
And I want to say I was probably 21, 22 at that point. I didn't have that kind of capital.
Right.
The sheer misery of the whole thing, you
Right.
know. And we were right at a point where we were not making money yet on the cell towers. We were still figuring that business out. We had been doing the landscaping, and they said, "Hey, I like what you're doing. Why don't you do the concrete work? Why don't you do the chain link fence?" And then
Right.
it turned into lightning protection, and we were working our way through it.
Right.
Some of it was my own lack of experience. I was quoting him way too low.
Right.
Not that if he didn't end up paying me, it would have mattered anyhow. But,
Right.
I would say that was very painful for the first year and change after that, but you grow big and you grow wise from pain.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely. And that was back when a bankruptcy was really a bankruptcy.
Oh yeah, it was done.
But it was, it really impacted your life at that time in our history.
Yeah, I was embarrassed by it, and I was
Yeah.
watching my friends graduate from college into really good careers and
Right.
get new cars, and here I am starting from the bottom. I ended up going to the cable company in Fairfax County,
Yeah.
getting paid $11.05 an hour.
Which cable company was that?
Cox Communications.
Right.
They had just been just bought Media General.
Yeah. So you basically went bankrupt, and that whole cell tower thing was just sidelined.
Yep.
Got it. Done.
Gone. Liquidated.
And then you go to Cox. So tell us about your career at Cox and how that evolved.
That was 18 years. The first 8 of it, I went from a guy that didn't know the slightest thing about cable to and working inside people's homes. And I knew that I wanted out of that badly for a multitude of reasons. Got the engineering manuals from the engineering department, became an engineer, worked my way up, and then became a supervisor of the engineering and maintenance department. And then got promoted to the construction department, which is really project management and an incredibly difficult position. Right.
So at what point in there did you decide to go to college?
In the middle.
Okay. Of the Cox career.
Yeah, in the middle of the Cox career. Let me think about that, because I actually went to college for emergency medical services. I was a registered paramedic, and a lot of it had to do with 9/11.
Right.
And kind of a feeling like I needed to contribute somehow. You know, I hadn't done military service or any. I also, kind of like you and your producer, don't like the same thing every day, and I perceived fire and rescue to be very different, which it was not.
That would be not the same thing every day, yeah.
Well, that's what I thought, but it really kind of was, to be honest
was it really?
with you. It's fires are very rare in this county.
Yeah.
And the patients, everybody kind of glorifies wanting to go after the bad motorcycle accident, the bad traumas and things. And those are interesting, and you train like crazy for them. But most of the job is people with belly aches, diabetic emergencies. I feel faint. It's not, it's really a moving and carrying job.
Yeah.
So they have a burnout rate of over 90%. So I think God did me a favor on that one. I just didn't get hired.
So was it 2 years of college to get that, or was that
for a normal person who's on their parents' dole? For me, it's about 4 years, maybe 5. I'm not quite sure. I mean, Cox had tuition assistance that I took advantage of.
Okay, so you were working at Cox, and you were doing basically night school, after hour school, and you worked around.
And I had an infant son.
Yeah, and you had an infant son.
Yeah, so I liked to. I was a glutton for punishment back then. I don't think I could do that right now.
Yeah,
I don't think I'd want to.
Yeah, I think we all get to a point where we say we've had enough of that kind of fire hose through the eye of a needle.
Yeah, TV time's good.
Yeah.
I don't care what they say, but it all those things have their reason. I think I liked the school a lot better than I liked the actual practice of it. I think that whole field needs serious attention and to be revamped.
Right.
Very necessary in society, but
what would you revamp? I mean, anything simple, or is it just a big complicated?
Yes, I would separate them from the fire service.
Yeah.
They have the fire service available to help them where they need it, but there's tremendous resentment among firefighters that EMS exists amongst them.
I got you.
And it kind of poisons the culture and holds them back. And a lot of the fire chiefs are pure fire guys, and harbor those same sentiments and don't really do what they need to push that forward. Additionally, there's a lot of waste in it. Somebody should not be calling 911 for their remote control. But by law, 911 has to respond lest that person die for some other reason and they sue. So we've got tremendous waste here. If you talk to people from places like Germany, that would never happen. Right.
Well, it's interesting. It's funny you bring that up. But the whole European culture is so different than the American culture. People over there, you're kind of on your own. If you slip and fall in a store, that's kind of your fault, right?
Sure.
They don't. They say you should watch where you're walking. You slip and fall here, and it's the store's liability potentially.
How do we get that way?
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of be the lawyers.
It was exactly what
this was such a sensible country in so many ways, but it
really all boils down to policies and
political courage.
And who knows where that's going? We don't know.
I wish I was omnipotent and could tell you where anything was going in society right now. I mean, this has got to be the weirdest time you've ever experienced, isn't it?
It is for me. Yeah, I think I think that it's. Are you talking about with the COVID and?
Yeah. I mean, even the fact that we're kind of getting used to the restrictions with COVID.
Yeah.
Like I barely even think about it anymore. That's weird in its own right.
Well, I definitely. I hear you. It is. It's becoming the new normal for sure. It's coming the new normal for a lot of us, and I think that we've got this great studio downstairs. We talked about it earlier today, and we can't really use it because it's much smaller. and it's got a lot of acoustic controls in it, but we're too close together. Now we're upstairs in a big open room, and we're sitting 15 feet apart, and downstairs in the studio we would have been 3 feet apart, right?
Sure.
So we've got, but this works, from a podcasting perspective, it works fine.
It's awesome.
But you're right. The whole situation where we are getting used to it is weird,
Yep.
But I have a feeling this is just the way it's going to be. I really feel like our society was going this direction anyway. We were moving to more of an online culture. True. We were already doing a lot of shopping online. I've always worked an enormous amount of hours from home, my whole entire life, because as an entrepreneur, you go to the office and you work all day, you come home, you work at night, you work weekends at home. So kind of transitioning to working, 12 or 14 hours a day in the house was really easy for me.
I prefer it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I don't see us ever going back. Not in my group of folks that I work, not my team. Yep. I don't see us ever going back to what we had before at all. I think you're either going to have to be able to function in the online world, and you're going to have to be disciplined enough to get your work done on your own, or you're not going to make it in our organization. It's going to be that kind of a thing, but it's definitely odd,
Yeah, I'm hearing from managers, even from people I worked with in the cable company in the past, and they're saying that productivity is actually up.
It's really
afraid, and that it's shedding a light on people who were. I don't totally understand this, but what they were saying to me is that people who were able to kind of fake it and make it in the office, BS their way around, are being exposed now.
Yeah,
and you're either producing in a measurable way,
or you're out.
And they weren't necessarily measuring correctly before.
Yeah.
Or you're out. And I mean, I watch my wife. She just got a new position. She works from home. She's putting in 15 hours a day and doesn't bat an eye at it. I mean, she's fine with that.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing else to do right now. Wait till COVID's gone and you can go back to the mall, right?
Who in their right mind complains about having work?
Yeah.
We don't have the right to do that,
Yeah. Well, we had one individual who wasn't able to function. Right, needed the management, like you said, but everybody else on our team is really
probably in the wrong career to begin with.
Exactly. Well, so let's go back to you, because I want to talk about you some more. So we've got so you're at Cox. You do like your 18 years at Cox,
sure,
and you get your college degree in there, and then you start doing the EMS. Is that part time, or did you?
I volunteered and interned.
Okay.
And then once
Didn't take you long.
and I went through Fairfax County's process multiple times, which is very rigorous.
Right.
So I was actually what they call a top drawer candidate. I was fully qualified. It's the equivalent of like a TS clearance.
Yeah.
You don't get that, but they put you through polygraph, which is painful, a background check.
Yeah.
You got to be a good boy that entire time, no speeding tickets or anything. And just didn't get hired. And I'm not entirely clear why. I mean, there was a variety of. They did have a hiring freeze at one point, and then they weren't quite sure what they were going to do. But I look at it, and hindsight is a blessing.
Yeah.
But
it's funny. It always works out. Everybody I chat with, they always, whatever happens for a reason, and it always seems to work out for the best in the long run. So what did you do after Cox?
That's when I started this business, which is Evolution Broadband LLC. I decided I had enough of corporate life.
Yeah.
18 years is plenty, probably too long, particularly if you're in a meat grinder of a job like construction and supervision. My business is a little strange because I didn't want to go source capital from a loan.
Right.
So while I'm building the communications business, we do home improvement, landscaping, things that I've done in the past.
Right.
That's not necessarily the future of my business.
Sure.
But it has allowed me to keep good employees and keep the lights on.
Yeah, especially now with the whole COVID thing, because
eggs in one basket's bad.
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier. So your company was wiring. Tell us what you were doing before COVID.
So we wired entire hotels.
Yeah,
and the demand that's occurring there is, you'll find this interesting, but hotels are realizing that even ahead of COVID, that they better have first-rate Wi-Fi accommodations, or they're going to be destroyed on their reviews. People were putting reviews on Hilton's website saying things like, "We'd sleep in the hallway if the Wi-Fi is good."
Yeah.
They didn't care how clean the bathroom was anymore. I'm sure that's important,
right?
But it's farther down their list of concerns. And you've got a young man right behind you. How critical is it to you
Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, I can't stand it. Now that it's work from home and this whole other travel and tourism thing, I know people who are taking their kids on the road for the next 6 months, bought an RV.
Yep.
And everywhere they stop, that is the key metric. Not just that you have Wi-Fi, but how good that is.
Yeah.
So the hotels are taking it where they had Wi-Fi in the hallways or somewhere common, and they're putting them in each room with their own LAN wire.
Wow.
And that's what we do. We do what's called post wire. I have guys that work for me that can paint and drywall immediately after we get those lines run, which is really important to hotels as well.
Right.
We can fill holes where there's not coverage.
Yeah.
And then automation is the big thing too. I think you're going to start seeing even high-end hotels that no longer have a front desk. You have an app on your phone, the Hilton app, and you've already been checked in, and not only does that app check you in and check you out, but it opens your door. When you walk in, all of your settings are done.
Because it's going to remember who you are, right? You'll have a profile.
Yeah, and to the frequent traveler, that probably means a lot. I mean,
what temperature do you want the AC at?
That's
do you
exactly
want the
right.
lights on when you come in? And
even the window shades were motorized and connect to that. Another one that was interesting to me is it knows what streaming apps and channels you like, and that's already loaded on your TV.
Oh, very cool.
So they're monetizing. I've been iffy on the Internet of Things and the excessive automation because a lot of it was very cheesy at first. I don't really care if I have purple recessed lights or red, some of the things just really didn't resonate with me, but I understand it from a commercialization sector.
Yeah. I have mixed emotions about all that automation. I love it. I've got a lot of automation in my home. I've got the MyQ, LiftMaster, garage doors,
nice
and
stuff.
but you need a different app for each. My lights need one app, the garage doors need an app, the Nest needs an app. So you've got all these different apps, Sonos, the entertainment system for the house, and they all work a little differently. So when somebody comes up with an app for apps.
It's called Alexa and Siri, but the truth of the matter is, my last TV I bought specifically so that it would work with Alexa, and it really doesn't. I mean, and I keep running into until they improve that. And I had another really smart fellow that wanted to start a home automation business and really focus on houses like this, but this person had worked in development and never dealt with customers directly. And so
that's a good
idea, but when this customer calls us up at 11 o'clock at night because they got a window sensor not working, how are you going to feel about that?
Right.
Because, somebody that hasn't don't think. You and I have dealt with customers for years and know how fickle that could be.
Yeah.
And it turned out, we were right to not get into that business because of the exact same thing. There's just a lack of cohesive standards.
Right. So just to go back for a second, though, for the folks that listening who may not realize why a window sensor at 11 o'clock not working may be an issue, because if you try to turn on your alarm and you're going to bed at 11 o'clock at night and you get the error code that says family room window not closed, and it is closed, there you've got a bad sensor. And if you're not going to be the type of person who can deal with it in the morning, you're calling the alarm contractor or the low voltage guy who put it in and say, I need you over here to So you and I get that. Your other friend there, you schooled him, I'm sure.
Yeah, he changed his mind when he heard that. I mean, most of us want to know that we're off work at some point, even if we're somewhat on call or whatever. And that, being on call, that was something I did for 15 years at Cox.
Yeah.
And didn't really miss that.
Yeah.
It is nice to crack a beer and not have to worry about.
Well, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be on call, I think, when you're younger. When I owned my water damage company.
Exactly.
Oh, it was nothing more exciting. Sometimes, not always, right? But you get that 2 o'clock in the morning, into the middle of the night, somebody's got a flood in their house, and you're going to go save them, right? And you get over there, and you start getting them dried out, and I think there's a lot more knowledge in the world now, and people can go online and understand what happens when there's a flood in your house. But in the 90s, when there was a flood in your house, most people had never experienced it. They've never heard about it. They didn't know what to do. And you would show up, and just a little bit of education that you gave folks in the first 10 minutes you were there would calm them down, and they would realize that you're going to be able to.
They still freak out.
Yeah, they did.
I manage condos.
Yeah, but when I was younger, it was fun. Now I tell my kids after 8:00 at night, be careful what kind of problems you bring to me.
You just change. You're absolutely right. It's an age thing. We saw that the senior tech. We saw two things happen after the age of about 40, and the hourly wage go above $30 an hour.
Yeah,
people didn't want overtime anymore.
Yeah.
Prior to that, there were guys that could have worked 100 hours a week and taken everybody's on call. But the kind of on call we dealt with, at least on the engineering side, was part of someone's network is out at 2 a.m.
Right.
And the worst case scenario is it's really icy outside, and the telephone lines run behind people's houses, and now you got to knock on doors and hump a ladder.
Yeah.
And that's like everybody's nightmare. But it's it had its fun moments too. I mean, there's an adrenaline rush when you hear somebody rack a shotgun round.
Yeah.
Because they don't know you're the cable guy, or they don't care, or they're a conspiracy theorist that think you're really from the government. I mean, there's a variety of stories. Yeah. Cable, on the outside of it, looks like it would be a really boring job.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because it was very interesting. I met Colin Powell. I used to be his cable guy.
Right.
He used to go into his house regularly. Very, very nice to me.
Yeah.
Whereas EMS and fire, I thought would be very interesting, and I was horribly bored.
just going to say that. Yeah. It's
Isn't
funny.
life like that?
It is.
The things you think will be so boring. And then you ask people out in the field. For instance, I was asking a surveyor, or different surveyors I run into the field. I was like, what's the craziest thing you ever seen? I mean, I can't even mention the stuff they told me about this area and what they've run into going through undeveloped areas and stuff like that. But you wouldn't look at that job, think it was interesting.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting.
Yeah. If your mind is that kind of a mind that gets, gets excited about that kind of stuff, for sure.
You got to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
To go trespassing. Like the way that they have to and whatnot. But again, it goes back to, you wouldn't, as a kid, look at that job and be inspired and think, hey, this would be amazing. And sometimes these things do turn out to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and you don't really know what it is until you do it. You
don't.
Hi, Michael Schnitzer here, president of Stanley Martin Custom Homes. Our buying process is completely transparent and is 100% focused on avoiding unpleasant surprises during the construction phase. To learn more about our processes, pricing, and floor plans, please visit us at webuildonyourlot.com. That's webuildonyourlot.com.
So let's go back to your current company, which is, tell me the name again.
It's Evolution Broadband LLC.
Okay. So you were cooking along pretty good.
Yeah, we were getting hotels, and it looked promising.
And then COVID comes along, and how did COVID impact you? So talk about that a little bit.
Initially, it was kind of peaceful in a weird sort of way. We were able to blow through the hotels quicker because they didn't have the customers. Mm-hmm. And for the hotels, the alarm bells hadn't quite sounded. I want to say that was February-ish.
Yeah.
Now, we were working on a hotel down in D.C., and March hit, and D.C. shut things down.
Right.
And that was devastating for that hotel because of cherry blossoms.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so when you look at retail stores and they talk about how they need to make their overhead during the Christmas season, a bad Christmas season can end a whole chain.
Right.
And then they make incremental money over the years for hotels in D.C. at certain events like cherry blossoms.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that hurt them. They took the high side and said, well, let's go ahead and get all this work done in the hotel because it won't affect customers much. Then they had the riots, and they had to board up. And so he's just really taken a beating down there, and I feel for him. But how it's impacted me is the hotels are not investing.
Right.
And upgrading your data infrastructure, your door locks and all those things is a major investment. I mean, for, a 150-room hotel, minimum, you're staring at $50,000 to have us come in and rewire and splice and test that, minimum. And that's before all the other stuff's done in there.
Right. So you and I are chatting right now in September of 2020. So what do you see going forward from here? Do you see any kind of a rebound happening, or is it just are you dead in the water? What are you sensing is going to happen?
I am not. I've survived because I am small and agile.
Yeah.
And I was really upfront with my employees. I saw this having some effect and said, you need to make sure you're talking to people, and on slow weeks you have other places to go. And my painter who's worked for you, he has other paint gigs. I mean, you've made the point in the past. There's work out there. You just got to find it.
Right.
But we also, the core product that we're heading towards, which COVID is likely to help, and we've already started doing in the past couple of months, is construction of 5G wireless.
Right.
Towers, what they call small cell.
Right.
So we taught ourselves in conjunction with another company how to do it. The other company has a prime contract. I have a NDA. I'm not allowed to say who my customers are, which sucks. But there's certain aspects of that that's really critical to these companies. But the future is 5G and beyond.
Right. So are you going to be actually putting up towers alongside of this other company with this other company, or is it just going to be
the other company sources and generally manages the work?
Yeah.
I execute the work.
I got you. So
So
you're a sub.
I am a sub of theirs. We may merge down the road, or I'm not in a rush to do that. I've overheard you say it in the past, partners suck, and I agree with that. I'm very leery of that. Joint ventures, I don't mind, because
partners are if you're. I think all partnerships evolve over time, and they always start out in alignment, right? You always start a partnership out where everything is perfect, and then you agree on everything, and then as time goes on, you start to grow in different directions, right? So I would never. I don't think I would ever go into a true partnership again without some sort of an exit strategy.
Sure.
But at this point in my life, I like being in control of my own world, just like you do, right? So
yeah, and people mean well, but they change. And
yeah,
I mean, I look at these partnerships just like any marriage.
Yeah.
And I was told, I've been married for going on 21 years now, and I was told probably the best piece of advice I heard was that if you enter the marriage looking for 50-50, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
If you enter the marriage saying, I'm going to do 70%, you always you probably do well. But I don't know that in a business partnership that's so great either.
Right.
Why should somebody get away with 30%?
Exactly.
A marriage is a whole different thing, but it's still, I think it's normal for a human being to assign a higher value to their efforts.
Yeah. But if you're putting in 70% on your marriage, your spouse is probably thinking you're only putting in 30. So
but he told us that she should think 70% on my end, and I think 70% on my end, and somehow, you know what I mean?
You'll meet in the middle. I
think they were right. I think his point was stop measuring it.
Yeah, exactly.
Worry about your contribution and stop measuring the other side.
Makes
business
perfect
partnership, that can get a little sticky, particularly if you think they're dipping into the till.
Absolutely.
And partnerships like big accounting firms and things like that. My father-in-law was a partner for Arthur Anderson, and he worked hard and worked his ears off, but I would hardly say that that's business ownership.
Yeah.
You have senior partners and managers above you. You are a partner in name. You make a lot of money, but you are not a partner the way you and I are talking about it.
Exactly.
But in either case, 5G is definitely the future.
Yeah.
The cable companies are struggling badly with it.
Yeah.
And let's be real, there is no such thing as cable and telephone anymore. I call them cable, but
Yeah.
all of them are like your trash companies. They bring the same service, essentially, and then they fight over the rates.
Yeah.
But they've struggled, particularly in cable, because they spent so much money in the early 2000s redoing the network.
Right.
And it's just
Fiber optics and all that.
It's just, well, that's the FiOS and stuff like that, but the actual companies that were just cable really just improved upon the copper they have out there.
Right.
They ran fiber closer to you. FiOS is in your house.
Right.
And I've worked on fiber optics and copper for years, and there's just no equivalency.
Yeah.
So, they're at a turning point, and where COVID ties into this is with all these people working from home, the bandwidth needs are shifting from the big businesses to the homes. And so there's demand for bandwidth coming out of people's houses that historically was in high-rise buildings.
Right.
So 5G is the equivalent on one small cell tower, which is a telephone pole that's just a little higher than, the one that it replaced.
Right.
Is the equivalent of 3 cable systems.
Wow.
It's enormous.
Wow.
It's 3
different
different
and that's coming. I mean,
frequencies.
that's starting to hit the streets now.
I've done 3.
Yeah.
And then because we're newer, the POs are going a little slower, but we think that November, December, it's going to really kick off hard.
So can you say where you've done the 3?
Leesburg.
Leesburg?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't say which streets.
No, sure.
The truth is, I'm not sure why that's confidential.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because you can drive around and see them.
Yeah.
The only other thing I can figure is that the conspiracy theorists are hitting 5G pretty hard.
Yeah.
I've looked all over these units and cannot find the coronavirus emitter. I haven't gotten it yet. I mean, but we do everything. We work with, where it's new for me is we have to subcontract a company that is certified by Dominion to go above power lines.
Right.
So I go up in the bucket with him, bolt things on, test things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And let me tell you about being within a couple feet of 38,000 volt lines.
Yeah.
You feel different.
Do you?
And everything that's metal, even though it's not touching it, develops a charge. So you're constantly there, and it's just a little unsettling. I mean, I have a lot of respect for the power guys. That's a different world right there. But it's neat and it's different.
Yeah.
There's something kind of thrilling about the whole thing and being able to drive down a road and, I built and tested that and I'm energized by it. And I think that's an important point because that's a big part of being successful in business. If you do not like what you're doing on some level,
right.
I don't care how much money you made, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You know?
You got to love it. That's for sure.
I would die in retail.
Yeah.
Could you do a retail job?
No
I could
way.
not stay in one place like that. And when you read books about consultants going in and fixing people, usually the things that are failing and the things they look at are almost always retail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Her dream was to start a bakery and it turned into her prison.
Yeah.
So, you know, which is the other point too, I would make is it was pointed out to me years ago, you can either make a choice to own your business and make decisions around that, or make other choices and the business owns you.
Yeah.
And had I done certain things, I could have grown the business as it stands. I could have had 20 employees very easily. I have but I would have been miserable, man, particularly in the face of this pandemic and knowing that I'm on the hook to find 20 employees work every day. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The business would have owned me. We've stayed small and agile, and that's how I'm the reason.
Well, no,
I'm
I can
okay.
really appreciate that, and that's and that's kind of where I am in my life now as well. And I'm at a point where I want to work with a small group of people, and I want them to love coming to work every day, and I want to love coming to work with them. And to you start getting into those 20, 30, 40 employees, it's a whole different level of stress every day.
Oh, it's awful.
It's
awful.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. And I don't think the folks out there on the consumer side, and I haven't done a lot of talking about that, but I don't think that they really realize what business owners go through in a given day,
Not likely.
Yeah. And it's, and at a certain level, they really shouldn't care, right? If a consumer calls a business and they're not getting the service that the business is supposed to be selling, they have a right to complain and talk to the owner. But it doesn't take much to overwhelm a small business owner. You get a one or two of your team members that are not performing right or making mistakes, or maybe they're having a bad day and they're doing things wrong, and it just doesn't take much for things to start coming at you. Trucks break down, parts don't come in that you're expecting,
and it's you.
There's 100 things that can go wrong every hour of every day, and it's tough. It's tough, and I can appreciate where you're coming from, wanting to stay small and nimble. I agree.
And that's before we even start talking about the government and taxes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. You're sitting there when you own a business. So there's really, and I haven't really thought this through in a long time, but I used to talk to my team members about it. But you've got to deal with your landlord, right? Wherever your space is. You've got to deal with your technology, your computers, and your communication. You've got to deal with your HR, your human resources. You have the government taxes and all that. You have accounting. You've got to deal with your accountant. And when you're a small shop, you've got to deal with all those
you are
things.
Every department.
You've got to collect your money from your customers. You have accounts receivable. You've got to pay your bills. It's it's a lot of responsibility.
You are every department.
You are every department.
And that's, I'll hear people's dreams about wanting to go to business, and I support that. But I've heard it from some folks that exactly like you're saying, they've got the grass is greener mentality about it. And I've always been told too, and I really believe this is behind every successful business owner was at least 3 years of hard dues.
At least 3.
Nobody in it. The joint venture that I'm working with, he left a large telecom company as a director,
right,
and started this because he had the contacts in there. And he's had some rough stuff, and I've said, hey, look, I'm just going to tell you, you can be down on yourself or whatever, and I know you thought you were going to be profitable right out the gate, first month, everything like that. They said that is just not how the stars work.
Yeah.
Unless you got daddy and mommy money and things like that, that's all. But if you started this in the raw, the universe wants you to pay your dues and be humbled to a certain extent. There's always going to be exceptions, but even guys like Elon Musk, if you listen, he came close.
Yeah.
Right, with SpaceX and everything, he was right on the edge of losing everything.
Yep.
He said he had some horrible years, regardless of what it might have looked like in the public. So everybody pays their dues.
Yeah.
And you can, again, back to the point about perseverance, you either crumble in the face of that, or you stick it out somehow and get past it.
And you know what? Sticking it out is, to me, always the right answer. And fighting through it. If you're going to fail, you got to fight your way through it. You should try to recover, and then you can exit in a different way if you can. If your situation, you didn't have a choice, but you're 19 years old. I mean, it's pretty amazing you were able to do that, and it actually.
What was I thinking?
Yeah. But it shaped who you are.
Yeah.
It's a part of your DNA that, and all those little experiences, you could never take them. You'll never take them away from you. So what do you say to the young folks out there who are thinking about? And you and I talk about this all the time because we're about the same age. I think I'm a little older than you are, maybe by a decade.
Okay.
Right?
It's nothing these days.
So. But starting a business today with technology, like when you were 19 and you started your landscape company, what was the status of electronic communications? Did you have pagers yet at that time?
We'd just gone from pagers to flip cell phones.
Okay. Oh, that was a great time for me because I went from the bag phone to the
Radio Shack Tandy 5000 bag.
Exactly.
Or the brick.
Yeah, you remember the model number. Yeah, I went for the bag phone. We went to the pager. And the flip phone, so you started out, actually when I started my first business ventures in the mid-'80s, we didn't even have, I don't even think we had the bag phone yet. I think it was invented, but I don't think I had the resources to.
It was stupid expensive because I remember, slobbering over Radio Shack catalogs because they had cool toys.
Yeah.
You remember Radio Shack?
I
has
do.
No idea what Radio Shack is.
There's still a Radio Shack actually right off of exit 42 in Woodstock, Virginia.
Wow.
There's one. I think it's obviously.
I think I saw that. I was baffled.
Yeah, exactly. You did see that.
I was like, wow. And I think there's one down in Madison near my parents. I don't know what they do anymore.
They're still there. They're dinosaurs. But
they were terrible in their last years. They were not cool and fun like when we were kids with robots and toys. But they would have 3 or 4 pages dedicated to these amazing cell phones that, like you were saying, were either hardwired into your car and or this big or whatever. But I think that was because the first cell phone call was 1973.
Yeah.
And then it slowly, but I mean, you spent a minimum of $3,000 or $4,000 in money from back then. So it's incredible what they've done. It's absolutely astonishing.
So think about a 19-year-old today who wants to start a landscaping business. He's got his smartphone, right? Yeah. He's got QuickBooks on his phone.
Yep.
Right? So he's right there in the palm of his hand, can do his invoices, his accounting, and his marketing, so starting a business today is a whole different animal from a technology standpoint, right? Because we had to do our own books and we had to write checks and we had to mail the checks and all that. But I think, probably the fundamentals of running a business and starting business are exactly the same. You can run ads on Facebook, on Instagram, on Google. You can do all the digital marketing you want, but when that phone call comes in, you got to perform if you're providing a service, right? So it's kind of interesting, for the youngsters today, and I really hope that folks that are thinking about getting into business can get something out of our conversation because it always seems so impossible, to start a business. People look at, the folks that want to be business owners look at the business owners and they go, oh my gosh, you know what? They've got it made. And they have no idea what you're going through and they have no idea what you did to get there. And everybody tells me, man, it's just so impossible. It's not the same as it was before. And, you started your business at a time when it was a lot easier.
Not true.
I agree with you. It's not true. It's all the same stuff, Like what you're hearing on the Go With John show? Please share it with your friends. They can sign up at gowithjohn.com. But what lessons did you learn about customer service or about communication with customers or problem solving? Are there any tidbits of knowledge that you have that you would share with folks?
Yeah, I'd say, I was thinking a few minutes ago, you'll laugh or completely relate to this. I would say the one thing that taught me about that more than anything was years of waiting tables and bartending on the side.
That is
really incredibly formative work, because
you are not kidding. Yeah.
I mean, if there are people that come in for the sheer purpose of mistreating you, and you've got to suck it up and bring them. And I remember one time as a younger guy doing waiting tables, and we had a restaurant full of people, and our entire kitchen staff walked out.
Yeah,
and so did our supervisor.
Yeah.
And I was the guy having to explain to all these, and so you learn those things. And there's great humility in that. There's time management. There's so many things you can learn from that. But I will tell you this, and this is a controversial comment. You and I came up with always heard our whole life, the customer is always right. All right. I've seen companies go to the extreme on that, even in the cable company. And I would adjust that comment to say the right customer is always right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other ones, particularly these days, with instant reviews and things like that, can ruin your company very quickly and make you miserable.
Right.
And so, I would imagine you're even at a stage where if you're grateful for a new customer, but you're kind of evaluating them against behaviors you've seen in the past and the expectations. So you talk about how to communicate with them. Well, areas that I still need to improve in are setting correct expectations from the beginning.
Yeah.
I like people. I assume the best, but you need to sit down and say, this is what's going to happen, because there's times where certain customers have something floating in their mind that is completely different than the reality, particularly in contracting.
Yeah. Yeah, well, so in home building, I mean, we deal with that all the time, and I'll tell you what, probably the one thing I love the most about recording is nobody can ever go back and say that I said something different than I didn't say. And the irony of it is that years and years and years ago, I used to have all my conversations with every single buyer one-on-one, right?
Sure.
And I would say the exact same thing to every buyer every day, all day long, because if somebody asked me a question, there was only one correct answer to the question. And I shouldn't answer it with version 1A to one person and version 1B to another and version 1C to another. I would answer the question. And it was maddening to me when people would come back to me and I would have a subsequent conversation with them 2 days later, and they would ask me the very exact same question. Yep. I would give them the very exact same answer, and they would say, well, that's not what you told me 2 days ago.
Oh, boy.
And I would say, wait a second. I go, that's the only answer I know to that question. Well, what do you think I told you 2 days ago? Well, when we spoke 2 days ago, you told me blah, 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 blah. And I would say, well, maybe were you talking to some other builders on that same day? Yes, I made 5 or 6 phone calls, but I wrote down what you told me. And I said, well, it's not exactly what I said. Here's what I said. And when I started recording it and putting it in video and putting it out there, nobody can say that I gave them.
Correct.
Because what I say on video and what I say off video is exactly the same thing. There's only one answer. And I can hear you with managing expectations. It's so hard to do because, you don't know what's in somebody's mind. And that's the whole point behind our sales process at Stanley Martin is to get alignment with the buyer. It's a huge process. It takes weeks, right, to get on the same page.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's a really good point.
Yeah, and it's even things like I'm partially colorblind but did not know it.
Yeah.
Kind of a problem if you have a painting business, right?
Yeah.
I have a painter, and so I've learned that people will ask me my opinion on colors, and I'll be very forthright. I said, I'm the last guy on earth you want to ask.
Right.
for subjective things like that, because subjective, even though you're giving your free opinion, if they don't like it, there are certain people, the wrong customer, bear in mind, that will say, well, you told us, and they try to stick you with that. That's rare. It's enough to make you crazy, but again, those things right there. But if I set the expectation out that I'm applying the materials you picked, it's pretty hard.
Exactly.
If you don't like the way we applied them, then that's a different conversation altogether, because that's my end of the deal. But boy, anything subjective, you better have in writing. And then it can even be kind of delicate if you have that disagreement and you go, well, let's go to the recording, right? Because then you're essentially saying someone's lying. And
well, so I would never, when I say recording, I'm not recording conversations with customers. I'm saying I'm recording my answers.
Well, it's fair if you do. It's really fair if you do, for the exact reason. I mean, they talk about how bad human beings are as witnesses.
Well, that's true. That's true.
They say even trained police officers are horrible witnesses. It's just something in our minds that's different.
To twist what you hear, what you want to hear. So what any other tidbits for the youngsters out there?
I think so. And I think you relate to this as well, is you need to go get hard jobs. You need to get cut in, and I understand the allure of the desk job, of the internet stuff or whatever, but you really need to do hard work and wait tables, and even if you're doing it at night, and do those other things, because that's very formative and humbling down the road. And
it teaches you people skills, and it does. I'm sitting in a very unique seat now that I didn't even realize I was going to experience with this podcast, and. I'm starting to hear some common threads from people. I sold cars when I was young. We had a conversation with Jerry Berry yesterday. And Jerry talked about in his younger years working the snack bar at a bowling alley, and he sold cars. You're talking about waiting tables and getting, when you're young, and I don't think I even realized it when I was selling cars, the value of that experience to me in my whole life, right?
Absolutely.
And I think any kind of a job that you can get, either selling cars or waiting tables, or even doing hard labor, just getting out there and understanding what it is to work a 40-hour week and putting the physical labor in, it definitely puts calluses on your character, and it gives you that experience. You have to interact with people as you go through life, and it's it's very rare to interact with people at the level that I do, or it's very rare that your average Joe, would have a job where you're interacting at the level of people with, like a car salesperson would, right, or a customer service clerk at a retail store. But you're going to have to interact with other humans as you go through life, and that experience you get is invaluable. It really is.
It's even little things. I was telling my son, I said, it's great that you come and do jobs for me, but you'll never get from daddy what you will from somebody who's not emotionally invested in you, but is going to push you. I can remember being a busboy, probably 16 years old, and for whatever reason, I was leaning against one of the wait stations doing nothing. I thought that all the work was done. And this really nice lady I work with comes up and said, "Are you seriously just going to stand there doing nothing?" And that was like the moment that clicked with me, that I need to be on the move.
Right.
You cannot be the guy. And that fundamentally changed how I worked. I never wanted to be seen like that again. And my days went quicker. I was successful in other jobs because I was not the guy
who was doing nothing.
And that's not to say I'm the world's greatest worker by any change, but I get concerned that if we really are going to a work from home thing, which I think is overall good, that kids may miss out on some very good formative stuff like that. And you gotta, if you're gonna work from home, your work ethic better be really strong, buttoned up. The other pieces too, things that are particularly germane to this area. So my son is 16, and in the past year, I overheard his friend group talking about how there's a belief in his high school that if you're not pulling six figures by the time you're 25, you're a loser. Wow. Let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about liking what you're doing. Let's talk about all these other things. So there is this strive to succeed even if you're a miserable piece of it. You can do, the other piece of it too is that we've deliberately denigrated the trades. So in America, we're looking at a 500,000 shortage of technicians for HVAC alone in the next, I think, 5 years. Mm-hmm. There is nothing wrong with that field.
Right? No, not at all.
You can get great joy out of doing these physically difficult jobs. You can make great money.
Well, they're not. In fact, being an HVAC technician is not necessarily physically difficult. The service guys, it can be, right? The guys that are doing the installations, that's definitely a hard day's work for sure. But most of the HVAC technicians are coming in working on a computer that's inside the...
Or that. Yeah, you work your way up to a technician expert or whatever it is in there. But, you know, I mean, I was lucky to get with the cable company because what I discovered that my passion in life is troubleshooting and building. You know, there's just nothing like going behind 10 other technicians that couldn't fix something and you're the guy that fixes it. Right. And so there's real concern. You know, we do not have... you know, you were pointing about if you wanted to start your own landscape business and you're a young person, the problem is young people just statistically aren't doing that.
Right. They're not.
They've got everything at their disposal to do it easily, like you said.
Well, we're going to see what happens.
It could change.
Yeah. It may be changing right now before our eyes.
It might be because my son's been applying left and right and not getting jobs that would have been easily gotten before.
Yeah.
Maybe he's doing something I don't know about.
Yeah.
Maybe he's savage. I don't think that's the case. But, I mean, you know, in this area, fast food chains and Starbucks were always hiring.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, they still are. Revolving door.
They are, but there's been a bit of a wait list. There's a higher percentage of kids out there working. Yeah. And the other thing that happened too is the college kids coming back.
Yes. Yeah.
That's changed the market. So, you know, where a Starbucks might take their chance on a 16-year-old boy like my son, they don't have to right now.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, I'm hearing just that there's a lot of folks that are taking a year off. Also,
there's that too. It's hard for. I mean, that blows my mind that there's so much cash out there to do that, but that is happening.
Yeah.
You know, probably early retirements. Who knows?
Well, no, I'm talking about the college kids, the kids that would have normally go to school.
I see. Yeah. So then they're flooding this market with available headcount.
And I don't know. I don't have any statistics, right?
I think that's right.
I'm just hearing through my conversations with folks that.
Resuming in-session college was nothing more than window dressing. We all knew that.
Exactly.
We knew they were going to pull those kids back in a heartbeat. If I was that age, I'd be going to 400-person parties, invincible.
You can't stop it.
There's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking for girls. COVID's not getting in the way of that.
Right.
So, but the colleges are in a tough spot, right? So they gotta get that tuition somehow.
Yeah.
They get the kids on campus for a couple weeks and say, sorry, folks, beyond our.
Yeah.
And they're still able to charge that tuition because they are not refunding dorms. They're not refunding any of that stuff.
You're right.
So, you know, the kids are coming back. I have zero doubt about that. And, you know, again, those jobs aren't necessarily going to be there. To my son's credit, when we went out and planted those trees, he was amazing. The customer there thought that was the best thing they'd seen in a long time. You know, a father and son working, and I'm coaching him, and you know, he enjoyed swinging the pickaxe.
Yeah,
but
it is fun.
It's good for you, man. It's amazing. Those are good memories for me when I was younger. I might have hated it at the time, but it's. You know.
Yeah. And we're gonna do some more conversations down the road with your son, and we're gonna talk about. You know, it's funny how you ended up here today. Was we actually started talking about technology one day out of my driveway, and I was talking to you about how the cell phones have just, in my view, really destroyed the company culture that used to exist.
I'd agree.
in my workplaces before we had mobile phones, and it's really only been the last 5 years.
Too much access.
Yeah, too much access, and the folks that are coming into the workplace now, the younger folks have grown up with the phone attached to their hand, and they can't leave it in their car. They can't get rid of it. And you and I were talking about some of the challenges you had with the phones in your son, and we definitely want to have that conversation another day. That's a whole nother.
That's a big ball of wax right there.
That is, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation. But
if you say the word Facebook in front of that generation, by the way, you date yourself.
Yeah, exactly. What is that, right?
I'm not even. Do they even look at Instagram anymore? I mean, what's the current one? It's TikTok, right?
Yeah. Well, no. You know what? I'll tell you another side story. Another guy I'm going to sit down with, and I just did kind of a pre-show phone interview with him the other day, Ed Shudell. He said that some guys, young kids, high school kids, were going through his neighborhood door to door, knocking on doors, asking if they wanted their decks power washed because they were out of school because of the COVID. Great. They didn't have anywhere to go. And it was like 3 guys knocked on his door. He said, oh, yeah, sure, wash the deck. And at the end, he says, you guys did a really great job. You should advertise on Facebook. And he said they all 3 looked at each other and they said to him, what's Facebook? And he says, you can advertise on Facebook. He goes, if you just put an ad right here, everybody in the community will know where you are. These high school guys didn't even know what Facebook was.
It's gone for them. It's
gone. It's done.
It's like the old people. They said that's grannies.
It's kind of come and gone just like that. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy considering.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I give Facebook credit because they had a long run compared to MySpace.
Yeah.
The other one that's interesting too is they don't do email.
Yeah. No, they don't.
They do not do email.
Instagram. They do Instagram. Yeah.
It's trashed their ability to write.
Yeah.
The schools have had to, because they do so much shorthand, it started to creep into their literary skills.
Yeah.
Which has been a complaint of colleges for quite some time, that people can't write.
Yeah.
So, that's the negative side of it. The positive side of it is if you develop writing skills, you'll now be in demand again because they need writers. Because I'll tell you what, I go on some of these news websites and I can't believe how bad the writing is.
I know, it's horrible.
Yahoo News is probably the worst. They don't edit things anymore, and that's it's going to come back around to an opportunity for people, a good, well-moderated site.
Yeah.
But I know that's taking a right turn right there. But it's interesting times for the kids.
Well, we got a lot to talk about. I think we can carry this conversation on. I mean, for sure. But so let's do this. Let's find a way to wrap it up real quick so he can have a wrap up piece. So Frank, in closing, first of all, thanks for coming in.
Thanks
really
for having me.
enjoyed
I'm
this
flattered.
conversation.
Yeah,
it's good. Yeah, and I think we're going to continue this in other episodes down the road. But just kind of wrapping up, tell us one last time what you're doing some landscaping. Tell us what you're doing. What kind of work you would like to get from our client base, and you tell us a little bit about your cabling work. I guess is kind of not something that our database may be looking at. But
it's tough to say. It comes out of nowhere. But we do data cabling and testing.
Yeah.
And we build wireless infrastructure.
Right.
So
and then
that's my core business.
You still have a landscaping business,
landscaping,
right? Which
home
is
improvement mostly. Actually, I have a full-time painter.
Yeah.
Drywall. We renovate bathrooms quite a bit.
Yeah. He's a great painter, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's a great painter.
Nietzsche is a great guy. I'm very happy with him.
Yeah.
So, we do that to fill the time, and we like that as well, but there's millions of companies out there that do that, and not millions that build 5G.
Exactly.
So I'm happy to hear from anybody on it. We do special projects and things like that. I've built about 10 waterfalls. That's a lot of fun, but that's a niche product that, and I specialize in making them look real natural and things like that, so... I can always be hired to do that or fix what you've already got.
Sounds good. Well, there's a link on the website with your information on it. So we look forward to having you as a friend of the show. So thanks again for coming in, Frank.
Thank you.
Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Go With John show. Please subscribe on the podcast platform of your choice and keep up with our latest episodes and what's going on with the show at gowithjohn.com. That's gowithjohn.com.